Good morning, everyone. Glad you could make it. Is there anybody online? Okay, good. So today is the fourth session in a four-part introduction to Buddhism. And we've covered up to this point the identifying who Shakyamuni Buddha was, his first teaching of the Four Noble Truths. We talked about refuge and the three jewels of refuge. We talked about karma last week, and today we're going to talk about bodhicitta, or the spirit of enlightenment. So the Sanskrit term bodhicitta, bodhi means the enlightenment of a Buddha. It comes from a root Sanskrit word that means to be awake. So the Buddha is somebody who is awakened from the sleep of ignorance. And citta generally has the meaning of mind. So it can be the mind of enlightenment, like that, but its description is more in terms of a mind that views Buddhahood as a means to accomplish the welfare of all sentient beings and aspires to achieve that. So bodhicitta then is based upon an altruistic attitude that seeks the welfare of all living beings, is motivated by great compassion, and a compassion that takes a personal responsibility to accomplish the welfare of all living beings, separating them or leading them from suffering into the perfect happiness of Buddhahood. So as one learns more about the state of Buddhahood, then this bodhicitta, or spirit of enlightenment, becomes more mature in one's mind. But essentially, it recognizes the state of Buddhahood as this perfect cause for the welfare of all living beings. So although the qualities of Buddha have been described in many different ways, such as being free from all of the emotional afflictions, karma, obstacles to knowledge. The one that makes it stand out to the person who generates bodhicitta is its ability to enable one to accomplish this purpose of freeing beings from suffering and establishing them in perfect happiness. So not only does one have to have an idea of Buddhahood, but one has to also have an idea of one's potential to achieve Buddhahood. So the potential is based upon the fact that our minds and the minds of a Buddha are essentially the same, in that our minds are characterized by being dependent upon causes and conditions, and that through that dependence, then all of the causes and conditions that create obstacles to achieving liberation and obstacles to knowledge can be removed. And unlike the physical body, the mind does not have limitations. There's, our bodies can run only so fast, swim so fast, get only so tall, lift only so much weight, live only so long, like that. But the qualities of our mind can be developed continuously and without any limit. So, for instance, the attitude of compassion that we have, which seeks to free beings from suffering, can arise with respect to, those persons whom we love. It can arise with respect to, our pets and so on, but it can be expanded without any limit. It can be expanded to all living beings. And also a mental factor like our ability to concentrate on an object. We can concentrate on an object, but that ability to concentrate can be expanded more and more and more without limit. So, like that, the qualities of the mind can be perfected, is given enough time. And of course, one lifetime is not enough time to perfect all the qualities. So it's the ability to imagine becoming a Buddha is also dependent upon one's ability to understand how there's a continuity of consciousness, and that this consciousness that we've had all of our life, when we observe it and how it operates, we see that it arises from a previous moment of awareness, which arose from another moment of awareness, which arose from another moment of awareness, that the current moment of awareness gives rise to the next moment of awareness, like that. And so the first moment of awareness in this life had to come from a previous moment of awareness, and the last moment of awareness of this life will produce another moment of awareness, and so on, for a beginningless and endless continuity of awareness. And awareness is the basic characteristic of mind. When we speak of mind in Buddhism, we're talking about being aware. So this continuity of mind that we have right now, through our practice of cultivating the qualities, eliminating the faults, will ultimately result in us becoming a Buddha. But in order to achieve Buddhahood, we need to have the aspiration to do so. And that's what bodhicitta is. It's this aspiration to achieve Buddhahood, which is viewed as and appreciated as having this capacity to enable one to fulfill the purpose of one's compassion. So there are many advantages of cultivating bodhicitta. The one advantage is that without it, you can't achieve Buddhahood. So there's a great advantage that it opens the door to the path to Buddhahood. And it's said to be not only the doorway or the gateway to achieving Buddhahood, but also the universal vehicle practice, or the Mahayana. So without the bodhicitta, no matter what practices one engages in, one will not be creating the cause for achieving Buddhahood. During Atisha's visit, when he went to Tibet to teach, he stayed there for 20 years. And during that time, he received word that there was a person that he knew in India who had been practicing one of the major tantric practices called the Hevaja Tantra. And he had achieved the state of stream enterer, which is the direct realization of ultimate reality, and but it's on the individual vehicle path, not the universal vehicle. And so his Tibetan disciples thought that news must have made him happy, but it didn't make him happy, because he said that had this person been practicing the Hevaja Tantra with the bodhicitta motivation, then they could have achieved complete Buddhahood in one lifetime. But because they had a lesser motivation, aspiring to achieve their own personal liberation from the cycle of uncontrolled death and rebirth, then it would take him some lifetimes to achieve that result. And once achieving liberation, would remain in that state of freedom for an immense amount of time before the obstacles to knowledge would eventually have an effect of lessening that concentration, so that the Buddhas could alert that person to the fact that the work is not done yet. That in order to complete the path, one has to eliminate the obstacles to knowledge. And so to do that, one has to cultivate loving kindness and great compassion for all living beings, take upon oneself the personal responsibility to achieve that result and generate the aspiration to achieve Buddhahood, and then maintain that aspiration, engaging in the various practices that will result in Buddhahood. And although Shakyamuni took 3 countless great eons once he generated the bodhicitta, 3 countless great eons to achieve Buddhahood, it was considered quick, even though it's inconceivably long. But for an arhat, somebody who's completed the individual vehicle path, it can take even longer, because they have this tendency to go into the meditation on ultimate reality, which is a state of complete freedom, because they've eliminated all the obstacles to liberation. And to stay in that state, instead of working on the other perfections, besides the perfection of meditation, working on the other perfections to eliminate the obstacles to knowledge. So when I first started to study and heard about these different achievements, such as Arhat, which is achieving liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth, and hearing about bodhisattvas, who are those who have generated the bodhicitta and are on the universal vehicle path to Buddhahood, and hearing about Buddhas and hearing about the qualities of the Buddha, and that the achievement of our optimum potential is the state of Buddhahood, eliminating the faults, perfecting the qualities. It seemed like Arhathood was sort of brand X, and if you wanted to have the best attainment, you would aim for Buddhahood. But at that time, I didn't really understand the quality of the Buddha that a bodhisattva, an altruist, would appreciate Buddhahood as being, having this, providing one with this capability to actually lead living beings from suffering into happiness. That took some time. I'm bringing it up now so it won't take as long for you. Yeah, so it's the doorway to the Mahayana path. And so any virtuous action that you engage in with the motivation of bodhicitta becomes an actual cause for enlightenment. Whereas if you engage in the most profound of practices without the bodhicitta motivation, it will not be a cause for achieving Buddhahood. So it's extremely important. And a person who generates the bodhicitta, there's generating bodhicitta with effort and generating bodhicitta without effort. Generating bodhicitta with effort is following a line of thought that causes the bodhicitta attitude to arise in your mind, viewing Buddhahood as this, with its quality, its function, and aspiring to achieve it through a step-by-step process, which we'll discuss later. And then the bodhicitta without effort is, by depending upon bodhicitta with effort, one becomes so familiarized with that process of generating the bodhicitta that it arises naturally. And when it arises naturally, at that point, one is said to be a bodhisattva. One enters into the universal vehicle, the Mahayana. There's a story about how Shakyamuni first started to think in a way that would result in bodhicitta. And the story was he was born in some kind of a wicked place. As the story goes, he was born in one of the hells. And he and somebody else were pulling this wagon, heavy wagon. And it was an incredible burden for them to try to pull it. And there was somebody, the driver of the wagon, that had a whip, and the person next to this previous life of Shakyamuni fell down. It was just too hard, and the driver got off his seat in the wagon and was going to beat him to make him stand up and to keep pulling the wagon. And this previous life of Shakyamuni had this moment, this thought came in his mind, and he thought, leave him alone. If you have to beat somebody, beat me. And the driver said, oh, who do you think you are? And hit him so hard that it killed him. But because he died with this altruistic thought in his mind, he was immediately born into some heavenly state. And in that state, he had the ability to see what his former lifetime was and what he had done in that former lifetime to be reborn in such a magnificent place. And he saw that it was a result of exchanging himself with this other person in the sense of having more concern for this other person than he had for himself, which is an altruistic attitude. And he recognized then from there on that altruism was incredibly valuable. If just one moment of this altruistic attitude could have burned away the remaining force of karma that caused him to be reborn in that terrible place, and immediately caused him to be reborn in this heavenly realm, he started to practice it. And so that was the beginning of his cultivation that resulted in the bodhicitta attitude. And once he had this effortless bodhicitta, that is where they started to count the three countless gradients that took him to perfect all the qualities, eliminate all the faults, and achieve the state of Buddhahood. So when a person develops the bodhicitta, There's said to be a bodhisattva, this person who's on the path of the Mahayana path to Buddhahood. Bodhi again means Buddhahood, and sattva means a brave person. One translator I knew translated it as an awakening warrior. So, yeah, one becomes a bodhisattva. And one also is known as a child of the Buddhas. Because one will eventually become a Buddha, just like a child of a father and mother will eventually be, mature and become, a patron, or have their own household like that within that family. And it said that one becomes an object of offering and prostrations by humans and even gods, no matter what your status is. You could be a homeless person, and if you generated the bodhicitta, if there were any gods in the neighborhood, they would bow down to this person and make offerings to them. Also, with respect to even the arhants would pay respect to a person who has just developed the bodhicitta without having come close to the arhant's cultivation of wisdom. And it's similar to how the crown prince in a family would be respected even by the prime minister, who has, so much more knowledge than an infant on how to run a kingdom. But that infant will one day become the king. And so similarly, the person with newly developed bodhicitta will eventually become a Buddha. And therefore they're given great respect. The Buddha one time said, how people like full moons, will go out of the house to look at a full moon or find their special spot by the coast maybe and look at the full moon. It's common practice all around the world. And the Buddha said one time that, you all respect the full moon, but if you respect the full moon, then you should respect the new moon too, because it will become the full moon. And he said, like that. He said, if you respect me, then you should respect the bodhisattvas who've newly developed the bodhicitta, because they will become a Buddha because of their bodhicitta. And the bodhicitta is also a source of an immense amount of merit. Any action that one engages in results in a great amount of merit, because one is seeking to become a perfect cause for the welfare of all living beings, wherever they are. And all living beings, the number of all living beings is called countless. And and as a perfect cause for the welfare of countless living beings, one is not going to just relieve them from minor suffering for a short amount of time. One is going to lead the way for them to achieve the complete liberation of suffering forevermore, and also to establish them in a perfect happiness, as much as the mind is capable of generating, with the elimination of all obstacles to knowledge, and engaging themselves in the continuous, effortless activity of leading others to enlightenment. So it's extraordinarily virtuous. And the Buddha one time asked his disciples uh, if they thought that if everybody on the planet were to offer a universe full of wonderful jewels to the Buddhas for 100 years, would that accumulate a lot of merit? And his disciple says, "Oh yes, Lord, that would create a lot of merit." And the Buddha then said that, well, a bodhisattva who has just newly developed the bodhicitta were to offer one spoonful of food to a dog would create an immensely greater amount of merit because of their motivation. So, it's said that in order to become a Buddha, one has to complete two collections. One is the collection of merit, and one is the collection of wisdom. The collection of merit, which is, virtuous deeds that one engages in for the welfare of others, like generosity of different types, whether it's teaching, whether it's giving objects that they need, and so on. Patience, moral discipline, all these activities that the bodhisattva engages in, they ultimately result in the form body of the Buddha, which is the aspect that the Buddha takes to be able to guide living beings, in a way that living beings can relate to. So that's the form body. Then the cultivation of wisdom, to try to penetrate through the curtains of illusion to see reality as it is. The cultivation of wisdom, that practice will eventually result in the mind of a Buddha, the wisdom of a Buddha, which refers to the Buddha's omniscience as well as the ultimate reality of that mental continuum. And so that, and it's the Sanskrit term for that is Dharmakaya, which kaya means a body, as in body of knowledge, and Dharma is translated sometimes in this context as truth, like the truth body. It can also be translated as the body of the Buddha's qualities, like that. So the Rupakaya, which is the form body, and the Dharmakaya, which is the truth body of the Buddha, result from completing the collections of merit and the collection of wisdom. So whatever one can do to accumulate as much merit as possible is something that one, makes an effort and a strategy to try to cultivate as much merit as one can. So the bodhicitta motivation becomes of great interest to someone who is trying to accumulate merit. Then it also, bodhicitta motivation enables one to purify negativities with great efficiency. Just that one story of Shakyamuni Buddha, who had been in that terrible state of existence, just generating altruism for a moment, purified the remainder of the negative karma that caused him to be there. And then, so with bodhicitta, which is a further development of altruism, and has as its field of beneficiaries the countless living beings, that purifies any action that one does, any virtuous action that one does with that motivation purifies a great deal of negative karma. And so, like a person who understands that after this life, there's going to be continued lives because of the continuity of mind, and has an understanding and appreciation of karma and how the former actions of the mind create the experiences of the future, then has a great interest to generate virtue and familiarize the mind with virtue and strengthen one's discipline to avoid negative actions, and also uses the life also to purify negative karma that has been accumulated in the past. So through the generation of the bodhicitta motivation, engaged in actions to purify negative karma, purify a great deal of negative dharma, and this kind of ensures that at the time of death, then virtuous thoughts will arise, not negative thoughts, and that those virtuous thoughts and will become the cooperative condition for a positive karma to ripen and cause one to be reborn in a happy state. And furthermore, because of the accumulation of merit that bodhicitta is capable of, then one has all kinds of good conditions that one meets with. And because of the purification of negative karma, one tends to meet with less obstacles, even during this life. So there's many advantages to the cultivation of bodhicitta. So how do you do it? One can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to offer water to the Buddha, a cup of water to the Buddha with the bodhicitta motivation." That's not enough. It has to actually be a bodhicitta motivation. So, in order to achieve the bodhicitta motivation, there's two main techniques that were taught and are continued to be taught by the lineage. One is called 6 causes and 1 effect, or the 7-step method, and the other is called the exchanging self with others method. The 7-step method is said to be easier than the exchanging self with others method. So we'll begin with that one. But it too is not particularly easy. It requires some thought. And even before one begins the 7-step method, one has to cultivate equanimity, which I mentioned in one of the previous talks. The mind or the attitude that is attached to some but have an aversion to others, and not caring about the rest, that's not the proper basis for cultivating loving kindness and great compassion. One has to have a basic mind of equanimity, so where one regards all living beings in the same way, not being attached to some, not having aversion to others, and not being indifferent to the rest, but having an equally positive, interested attitude towards all living beings. And this is something that we can develop. Like if one there's a meditation involved in developing equanimity, where you imagine somebody that you don't like on your left, somebody that you do like on your right, and a complete stranger in front of you. And then you think of, why is it that I don't like this person? And you recall something about something that they may have done. They didn't laugh at your joke. They didn't, could be minor thing. It could be a major thing, but you don't like them because of that. And then you think, well, could that change? Could my attitude change towards them if they did something different? What if they smiled? What if they came up and apologized to me? What if they uh, offered their friendship? What if they gave me a nice gift? So then one's attitude would change towards that, because now they're being pleasant instead of unpleasant. And then one looks at the friend and the one likes and think, well, how did this happen? It was because they did something pleasant or appeared pleasant to me. So is that the only way they're ever going to appear to me? Is it not possible that they could do something unpleasant that I would dislike, in which case my attitude would change towards them? And then what about the stranger? They've neither been pleasant nor unpleasant towards me. So I feel kind of indifferent towards them and don't concern myself with them. And yet, as soon as a stranger that walked past me on the sidewalk, if they were suddenly to shout to me, to make me turn around, and they're holding my wallet that had fallen on the sidewalk, instantly they would be my friend. Like that. So this attitude that we have to attraction to some, aversion to others, indifference to the rest, is very changeable, because it's just based upon these experiences of pleasant and unpleasant. And that's not a very profound basis to have to interact with other living beings. And especially if you start to expand the meditation to not only this one lifetime, but say countless lifetimes, how many times the enemy has been my friend and whom I have loved dearly. How many times the friend has been my enemy, whom I have hated. How many times has the stranger been my enemy or friend? So many, 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 many times that the view of persons as friend, enemy, and stranger, based upon just a momentary experience of whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, appears, as shallow as it is. And so at that point, one cultivates this view that, actually they're all equal in wanting to be happy and to be free from suffering. And I needn't change my view towards them just because of some momentary experience that's taking place, but viewing them somehow in a deeper way, not somehow, in a way that understands that, just like me, they want to be happy and to be free from suffering. And this biased attitude is no longer worth maintaining. It goes out. And one then meditates with this state of equanimity to familiarize your mind with it. So on the basis of equanimity, then one engages in the 7-step method. And the first step is to view everyone as having been your mother in some previous lifetime. The reason why mother is chosen is because generally people have a warm relationship with their mother. Those who don't have a warm relationship with their mother can use somebody else that they have a warm relationship with, their father, their grandmother, whoever, somebody they have a warm relationship with. Not a hot relationship, an affectionate relationship from the heart with. And so this depends upon having an understanding of past lives, future lives. So one thinks that, okay, I had a mother in this life. My last life, I had a mother. The life before that, I had a mother. My current mother couldn't have been my mother in all of my previous lifetimes. Karma is just so different. People get born in different places, but I had to have a mother in each lifetime. So from there, then you go to the thought, if I look at somebody, no matter who it is, can I be sure that they've never been my mother in a former lifetime? And you can't be sure because there's no beginning to former lifetimes. So you've got an infinite number that increases the probability that they have been your mother at least once. Then you expand that. If they've been your mother once, then due to countless lifetimes, they could have been your mother more than once. And so you expand that all these beings have been my mothers countless times. And because of the loss of memory, I don't recognize them now as having been my mother countless times. But based upon this line of reasoning, one can arrive at some conviction that they have been. And at that point, you move to contemplating the kindness of the mother. And, so you think about that here's a person who decided to have you. She found she was pregnant and decided that she was going to have you. It could have been different. And in order to have you, that was going to change her life. And she accepted that. That's huge. And while she was pregnant, she took care of you to ensure that you would grow properly in the womb. She'd see doctor, she'd take the right kind of vitamins, all of this kind of thing. She would change some of her habits. As she got bigger, she may have not jogged anymore, thinking about baby bouncing up in her womb and wondering how that might feel, and think, well, I'm going to take it easy now, like that. But it was also difficult for her, like she had to change her wardrobe. It became she went through morning sickness. She hard to sit down, hard to get up again, all kinds of difficulties that she went through. And yet during that time, her main concern was for you, to make sure that you would grow properly in the womb. And then at the time of actual birth, then she had to endure great pain, especially if you were the first one. That's the hardest one. Great pain, even fear of death could occur. And but when you came out of the womb, generally, we've all seen photos of newborn infants, not so beautiful, but for the mother, the most beautiful being she's ever seen. She just wants to take that child and hug that child. And it's the Dalai Lama has mentioned that it's the mother's love for her baby that inspires the the feeling of love in the child. And so our capacity to experience that warm heart, that affectionate love that we have, is something that was instigated by the love of the mother. So huge. That's a huge benefit. And then when we're born, completely helpless. We wouldn't survive for more than a week if we were completely on our own. So we're helpless, and the mother takes care. She helps ensure that the father is a good provider, or she might have to do it on her own. And has to feed us because we can't eat by ourselves. She feeds us. She cleans us. You know, I'm from the time of cotton diapers, so it has to clean that mess. Lama Zopa Rinpoche one time said that he said, you know, you think that the oceans of the world are a large body of water? Your mother in countless lifetimes has cleaned up more urine than all of those oceans combined. Of your urine. Like that. So cleaned us, dressed us, and waking up in the middle of the night at all times when we were hungry. And of course, we couldn't speak. The only way we could let people know we were hungry was by crying and yelling, and was responsible for teaching us everything, teaching us how to speak, teaching us how to use the toilet, teaching us how to use a knife and fork, and spoon, teaching us how to be polite amongst others. And she was also spread the good word about us, so that when we went out, people would be interested in who we were, you know, speaking about how we were so intelligent, all of our accomplishments, that, you know, like we stood up at such and such month, and all these things, so that people were interested in meeting us. So guiding us in making the right kind of choices in life, to motivating us to study, to get enough sleep, to avoid activities that would get us into trouble. And even when we were on our own and self-sufficient, still would live in a house that had a spare room, so that anytime we could come and stay and visit, or if we had a hard time and couldn't support ourselves, there was a house we could stay in. So incredible kindness. So when you think of that kindness, and even the animals, and when you look at them, at mothers, they take care of their children too. You know, there's so many animal documentaries that you can see, and how you know, whether they're elephants or buffalo, if they have to cross a river, the mature ones will stand to make like a wall, so that when the smaller ones have to cross, they don't have to face the full brunt of the current. And they take care of their infants. You know, birds will go out and hunt for food, and then come back and feed their children like that. You know, you see these photos of a mother with her chicks under her wings in the rain to keep them dry. These are things that our mothers have done for us countless times, not just once or twice, not just the number of times we can remember, but countless times. So that's the second step, is thinking about the kindness of the mother. The third step is the thought, how are you going to repay that kindness? All you need to do is to think, how am I going to repay that kindness? And if you were thinking well about examples of the kindness that the mother has shown you, then when you think, how am I going to repay that kindness? Affectionate warmth, loving kindness comes into your heart. And that the thought that affectionate warmth gives rise to is, I want them to be happy. I want my mother to be happy. I'm going to do something to help my mother to be happy. So that's loving kindness. Then the next step is to consider that, well, you want your mother to be happy, but look at the problems that she is facing, the problems that she is enduring. That, like, if you saw your mother um, running towards what she thinks is happiness, but in fact she's running towards the edge of a cliff, how fast would you reach out and grab her? So this is the attitude of compassion. Compassion arises naturally towards someone that you love, and when you see that that person is suffering, you want to protect them and to find a way to end their suffering like that. So, like the mother is suffering from aging, sickness, eventual death. If she has already died, who knows what condition she's in? Just being, experiencing the results of actions that she's done in the past, where she had no idea that those actions would produce such a result like that. So, in that state, that's the condition that we see them in. And so you allow that compassionate thought to ripen on you, to mature in you. You're thinking, I wish she could be free of that. And thinking, at that point, you might pray, may she be free from that. But at some point, as that compassion grows within you, you start to feel, I have to do something. And this is the sixth. The sixth step is taking a personal responsibility to free all of these mothers from suffering. But how are you going to do that? It's difficult to even free oneself from suffering, let alone countless living beings. How am I going to do this? And that's where the seventh step arises, the resultant bodhicitta. I think I must become a Buddha, because then I will have the ability to guide living beings from suffering and to happiness. And so this is a practice that's done by people who want to cultivate the bodhicitta, to develop it, enter into the doorway to the universal vehicle to achieve or acquire all of the benefits of having the bodhicitta motivation. This is a practice that's done, and it's done, daily. It's a daily kind of practice that is done. So, and even I was yesterday. I was at the Vajrapani Institute outside of Boulder Creek, and we were celebrating. It was the Tibetan New Year, but we were particularly remembering Lama Yeshe, who's the teacher of many of us, and who started this organization that Land of Medicine Buddha is a member of. And he passed away 40 years ago, the Tibetan New Year, 40 years ago. So, and so I was talking to people that I've known for, a long time, fellow students of Lama Yeshe, and we were commenting on how you can kind of hear somebody and just the way they speak, you kind of, why don't they be quiet? Like that. And, and I'm thinking, that's because, we're not thinking deeply. We're just, we're just operating on a superficial level of just reacting to the pleasant or unpleasant feeling that we have upon, hearing or coming into contact with another person. But in order to overcome that habit of just conducting one's life on the basis of these momentary sensory experiences, we have to establish other habits. And that's where the meditation comes in, where you go through these 6 steps that result in the 7th step of the bodhicitta motivation. So on the basis of equanimity, one views all living beings as having been the mother, remembering the kindness of the mother, thinking to repay the kindness of the mother, generating love for the mother, generating the compassion for the mother, generating this special attitude of taking responsibility to free the mother from suffering and place her in happiness. And then the 7th step of generating the bodhicitta, this motivation to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all mother living beings. Like that. So that's the 7th step, or 6 causes and 1 effect method. And there's another method called exchanging self with others. And the exchanging self with others methods comes from the wisdom tradition. There's 2 main traditions that, starting from Shakyamuni Buddha. And one was presented to Maitreya, who was in the form of bodhisattva disciple of the Buddha, but actually had achieved enlightenment already. And then he passed it on to the great meditator and scholar Asanga. And Asanga then passed on the method of cultivating bodhicitta with the 7-step method. Then there's also the wisdom tradition, and Shakyamuni passed it on to his bodhisattva disciple Manjusri, who was actually already enlightened but was appearing as a bodhisattva during Shakyamuni's time to ask the questions that promoted the teachings of the universal vehicle. And when he passed this on, the wisdom tradition to great masters like Nagarjuna, who passed it on to other masters, and this included this method of exchanging self with other, and it eventually landed with a great practitioner who lived in uh, Indonesia, one of those islands in Indonesia, whether it was Java, I'm not sure. The Serlingpa was his name, but Serling something was the name of the island, and Pa means the person from that place, Serlingpa. And Atisha, who, as I mentioned before, he was a crown prince of the great kingdom of Bengal. And he gave up that position. He became a monk, dedicated himself to the study and practice of Buddhism, had over 50 gurus that he studied with, was highly accomplished in tantric meditation, as well as a scholar of the sutras and commentaries. But he heard that Sarlingpa had this special lineage of practice for cultivating bodhicitta. And so he decided to go there. And this was a big deal, to travel by ship all the way to Indonesia from going down the Bay of Bengal and out into the Indian Ocean, go around. And there's all kinds of difficulties. Not only is it a distance, but there's storms to have to endure and fight through. There's pirates to try to avoid. It's all kinds of difficulties. And so he finally arrived and asked Serlingpa for teachings, and he ended up studying with Serlingpa for 12 years. And this method of generating bodhicitta, and other subjects, but this method of generating bodhicitta was something that he learned at that time, called exchanging self with others. So the beginning of that practice is called recognizing the equality of all living beings. It's a little bit different from the equanimity meditation, but it's very similar. And this is one where no matter how different people appear, and no matter how different their conceptions are about what brings happiness and what doesn't, everybody is equal in wanting to be happy and to be free from suffering. That's equal. Everybody wants to be happy. They have different methods, no doubt, but everybody wants to be happy, and nobody's satisfied with just a little. They want to be happy all the time. So it's important to try to recognize that. So there might be some qualms that come in the mind. Well, what about a sadist? or a masochist? What about a masochist? They don't want to be happy, they want to suffer. But that's just a method to achieve their happiness. They still want to be happy. They just have this weird method. And I mean, you could say that, like the football players are going to be playing this afternoon. They enjoy playing football, but if you go to a practice and you actually, see the contact that's being made, that's suffering. But they enjoy. That's their method of achieving happiness. Everybody equally wants to be happy. So if it were possible to take somebody else's wish to be happy and to be free from suffering, and to replace your wish to be happy and to be free from suffering, if that were possible to do that, and suddenly you took theirs and put it in your heart, the wish to be happy and free from suffering, there would be no change. It would be exactly the same. Everybody wants to be happy and free from suffering, and that's equal. Methods, of course, huge diversity, but everybody equally wants to be happy, to be free from suffering. So that's the start. And of course, you have to think about it until you get this sense that you can recognize that yeah, this they all want to be happy to be free from suffering. And just that can be very useful. You know, it's well known that public speaking can be nerve wracking. It can cause fear, right? People, stage fright, whatever you want to call it. People can be frightened of public speaking, and I'm no exception. So, when I started to teach, I would, I was going in front of these people. It'd be a big room full of people, and I didn't know any of them, and they were studying some other tradition that only touched on Buddhist studies, and I wasn't sure if I should have even been there. And but I'd already made a commitment, and so then I just started to think, but they all are just like me and want to be happy and to be free from suffering, just like me. And that just that thought, I had some familiarity with that thought because I had meditated on it. Just that thought kind of removed this gap between me and them. It removed the gap. And I had no problem talking to them because we were so close, so much alike. Because that is really fundamental. That goes right into your heart of where you abide, of wanting to be happy and to be free from suffering. So that in itself is an accomplishment. Then the next step is to think about the disadvantages of selfishness. You know, pretty much everybody, if you use the term selfishness, like if say somebody is selfish, everybody knows that's a fault. That's not good to be selfish. That's kind of the way we're brought up. Is don't be selfish. Share with your brothers or sisters like that. Things like don't be selfish. The disadvantages of being selfish or of egotism, this attitude of regarding oneself as the most important, and that regards others not only as less important, but also as resources to help myself. And this attitude creates all the problems that exist in the world. All the wars are based upon that. All the terrible things that some bad world rulers have engaged in are a result of that. All the problems that happen between spouses are a result of that. All the problems that happen between parents and children are a result of that. Even if you were to look at just the 10 non-virtuous actions that we talked about last week, killing is a result of that. Stealing is the result of that. Sexual misconduct is the result of that. Lying is the result of that. Divisive speech is the result of that. Harsh speech is the result of that. Meaningless speech is the result of that. Coveting the belongings of others is the result of that. Having malice towards others is the result of that. And even wrong view is the result of that. Selfishness. All the negative karma that we've accumulated is a result of selfishness. All the problems that we have with each other is the result of that. And being lonely and without friends is the result of that. Having the limited cultivation of our potential is the result of selfishness. So thinking how Selfishness has so many faults. Then the next step, the third step, is thinking of the advantages of cherishing others. So it's really the advantages of altruism. The altruistic attitude is putting others in the most important position and caring for them like that. What are the advantages of that? Well, first of all, you're not going to be engaging in any of those 10 non-virtuous actions. Secondly, you're going to have good relationships with others. When others find that you care about them and that you help them, that they're going to be friendly to you. They're going to like you. You're going to have friends. You might have more friends than you want. Like that. Like Lama Yeshe, when he was a student, well, he had quite a reputation of having a really good sense of humor. And even when they were in the refugee camp in India, like 1,000 or more Tibetan monks in this former prison camp where the British had kept Gandhi for some time. There they all were, not knowing when or if they'd ever return home to Tibet, having to deal with this vastly different hot climate, having minimal food, all these things. The main way of studying was through, you would get information, a commentary on a text, and then you would go and debate it. So that was the main way of studying, was through debate. And on the debating courts, Lama Yeshe would have everybody laughing. That was just his way. He would have everybody laughing. And so he had lots of friends. And he said that sometimes he would have to pretend he was sleeping in order to be able to meditate, because they'd always be knocking on his door. Hey, let's do this. Let's go and do that. And he must be sleeping. So then he could meditate. So yeah, sometimes you could have more friends than you want. But if your attitude is to regard everybody as your friend and you want to help them, then having this altruistic attitude will be a source of great happiness for you, including the cultivation of your potential. Because if it's only yourself to please, you'll only do whatever is necessary to please yourself. But if you're concerned and dedicated to the welfare of others, you will continue to work in order to get that accomplishment, to get the ability, the knowledge, the skills to benefit others. Yeah, one time at the Kopan monastery in the old Gompa, the lamas lived on the second floor. And so we were up helping. They were doing some renovations and fixing some things. And there was this one door that had these small panes of glass. And one of the panes had been broken. And I knew how to replace the pane of glass. And so I removed all the old pieces and, carved out all the old putty and stuff and made it ready. And then I asked Lama Yeshe, he said, where's the new pane of glass? And he had his eyes rolled up. So, don't ask me questions like that. So, oh, sorry. And then I went to ask somebody who might know where it was. And eventually Lama Yeshe came by and he says, out on the veranda out there, there's a box. He said that the new panes of glass are in the box. So I went out there and I looked and I couldn't see them. I don't know why I didn't see them, but I couldn't see them. And he came and he said, "Look closer." And then I found the pane of glass, you know. So I just found that, you know, Lama Yeshe had all these different skills. And, you know, his own teachers wanted him to become a geshe because he had the knowledge, the skill in debate, all of that, that he could have become a first class geshe. But he wasn't that interested in becoming a geshe because he was more interested in teaching the Dharma, and he had this karma uh, with Westerners, non-Tibetans anyway, and he wanted to teach, and he didn't want to take the time to review all the studies and to do all this stuff just to get a title. He wasn't interested in titles. But so he had all this knowledge, and one of the lamas up in Kopan, Lama Pasang, who was kind of a manager up there, and he told a story one time where there was this Mongolian geshe who came to Sera Monastery, and there was a point where he was asked by the abbots of Sera Monastery to allow their students to debate with him. And he agreed with that. So they gave him a nice throne to sit on. And then the students would come up and, you know, ask their questions. And and his response to their questions were like, "Is that the best question you've got? I mean, something so simple." And he'd give an answer like that and shut them down. And the abbots were starting to get embarrassed, apparently, that their scholars were like trivial compared to this Mongolian geshe. And then Lama Yeshe got up and he started to ask questions, and that couldn't be easily dismissed. And one question after the next, penetrating the answer, dismissing the answer, going on and on. And Lama Pasang said, the Mongolian geshe started to sweat. And then all the abbots of Sera Monastery were happy. So he was also a great cook. And there was in Kopan once a number of Italian tourists came to visit this Tibetan monastery in Nepal. And one of the Italians that were there, that were already in Kopan, kind of took them on and says, "Oh, you have to meet Lama Yeshe." And so Lama Yeshe then started to talk to them about risotto, and the best risotto in Milan. And all these Italians, "You're right." So he knew all of these things. And, you know, when he came to the United States one time, he learned how to drive a car, much to the fear of those driving with him, but he learned how to drive, became independent. He went up to Seattle, took courses in gardening so that when he went back to Nepal and Kopan, he could develop gardens and grow vegetables and flowers and stuff like that. And there was just no limit to the things that he learned, because on the one, our mind is capable. We can learn anything. Number two, he was dedicated to the welfare of others. So it wasn't just himself. You know, one time we were invited to go on this pilgrimage to to a place in Kathmandu Valley where this is a natural image of Tara. There's a statue of Tara, you know, that is said to have just naturally come out of the rock. And it was also a famous place of these great these two brothers that received a teaching from the Indian master Naropa. It was called the Narokadra practice, and they promoted the lineage, and so their meditation place is still there. So we were going there, and I asked Lama Yeshe, "Would you like to come?" And he says, "Oh no, that's not my thing." his thing was he liked to study texts. He would study the text, expand his knowledge. And one time I showed up in the Gompa, there was something, I had this one book that a friend had loaned me. And he said, "What's that book?" And I said, "It's the Six Yogas of Naropa, commentary by Lama Tsongkhapa." He said, "Let me see that book." I didn't see that book for a couple of months. And one of the last great series of teachings that Lama Yeshe gave was on the Six Yogas of Naropa. He gave, we only covered the first of the six yogas on Tumo at Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa. That was in December of 82, January 83, and then at the Vajrapani Institute in, I think in the summer of 83. So he regarded that as a practice that he thought Westerners could really sink their teeth into. So like that. So with the think of the advantages of cherishing others. And then the fourth step is to exchange the way you feel about, instead of cherishing yourself, which creates all these problems, cherish others, which creates all these benefits. That's the exchange, to make that change in attitude. That, and we can notice all these times that, like, I could drink that water to please myself, or I could drink that water so I'll be better able to teach, like that. It's that change in the way one does things. I could eat this food because, oh, I like tasty food, or I could eat this food because it will help me benefit others. It'll give me strength to benefit others. So changing that attitude from being, ego focused to other focused, like that. And there is a meditation that's done to help to reinforce that. And it is the taking and giving meditation, where one imagines taking on the suffering of others and giving others one's own happiness and resources for happiness. And so the way one does that is you would imagine that the suffering and causes of suffering that others are experiencing rises up from them in the form of smoke. One inhales all of that smoke and sends it into the heart of where the self-cherishing, egotistical attitude is. This selfishness resides, and like a cold granite mountain, and one bursts it to smithereens. And you can keep doing that until one gets a real feeling of taking on this, eliminating selfishness from one's heart, and then thinking of all of these beings who want happiness just like oneself, and one has the feeling of enjoyment and having resources and good karma that could ripen and all kinds of good things happening to oneself. And imagine as one exhales that comes out is some luminous energy that goes to all living beings and appears to them in whatever way that will make them happy. If they want a BMW, may they have a BMW. I always make a little thing, and they'll drive to the Dharma Center in their BMW, like that. And and you can do that with many breaths just focused on that, and eventually you become so familiar with it, you can, with one inhalation you take on the suffering, the next exhalation you give them happiness. And it's not the thoughts are imagination, but the feeling you can experience. You would experience. You're not actually going to be taking on the suffering of others, but it the thought of taking on the suffering from others makes the selfish attitude freak out. And you can feel it. And so then it becomes a very good target for that smoke to just burst. And then thinking of bringing happiness to others, that automatically brings that, affectionate warmth. And one sends that out with one's warm exhaled air. And then you imagine it ripen in just all kinds of great ways. And it's not as if one is going to lose all one's good karma by doing it. One is actually going to be creating a lot of good karma, a lot of merit through that practice. But yeah, this attitude of exchanging stuff with others, Lama Yosha one time said that those bodhisattvas, they practice this so much so that, I mean, we can talk about, when the first bite of food, I might think about, may this give me the strength to help other living beings. And the rest of the meal, I'm just thinking of myself enjoying it. But he said the bodhisattvas, even when they breathe, they're exchanging stuff with others. And he was thinking at that time of this practice that I just described, which is when done by somebody who's familiar with it. And each breath, they can do this. And it's something that you can do all the time. It's like some people think, oh, I wish I lived in a Dharma center because then I could get teachings all the time. I'd be in a beautiful gompa like this with all these inspiring images and getting blessings, and I could attend pujas and stuff like that. Well, a practice like this, you can do anytime because you've got to breathe. And you can transform breathing into a practice that generates this, that emphasizes this practice of exchanging stuff with others. And of course, when you finish that practice, you kind of recognize the fact that this has been imagination. But if I become a Buddha, I can really have a positive influence on all living beings. So I must become a Buddha for the sake of all living beings. So that's where the exchanging self and other practice results in the bodhicitta motivation. Okay. We've run out of time. You can find these practices written about in a lot of Lamrim texts that have been translated into English. There's other mind training, Mahayana mind training texts that may also include, the 6 causes, the 1 effect method, or as another name, the 7-step method, and the exchanging self with others. In any commentary, not only the commentary, but the root text, Shantidevas engage in the Bodhisattva's way of life, the 9th chapter. No, it's the 8th chapter. The 8th chapter. It's the chapter on the perfection of concentration. He provides this methodology as the method to develop an object to develop concentration on. So the exchanging self with others. So either a good translation of that or a translation that combines a commentary to that, then you'll also find this methodology well explained. So you don't have to just rely on your memory of what you might have remembered after this hour and a half. So it's kind of exciting to think about the possibility that some new bodhisattvas may be coming into the world. So thank you very much.